My mother-in-law has been putting something in my food. The doctor found it. The lab results were shaking in my hands as Dr. Martinez closed the door behind him. 3 months of unexplained nausea, fatigue that felt like my bones were made of lead, and stomach pain that doubled me over at random times throughout the day. 3 months of my husband Jake insisting I was just stressed from the move, from living with his mother temporarily while we saved for our own place. Ethylene glycol, Dr. Martinez said quietly, settling into his chair across from me. The levels in your blood are consistent with chronic, low-dose exposure over an extended period. I stared at him blankly. I'm sorry, what is that? Antifreeze, Sarah. Someone has been poisoning you. The words hit me like ice water. The paper crinkled as my hands trembled harder. That's not possible. I mean, how would I even? You wouldn't accidentally ingest this much over this timeline. The levels we're seeing, the pattern of symptoms you described, this appears to be intentional. My mind raced backward through the past 12 weeks since Jake and I had moved in with his mother, Patricia, after our landlord sold our apartment building. 12 weeks of her hovering in the kitchen, insisting she cook all my meals because Jake's new wife needs proper nutrition. 12 weeks of her sweet smile as she'd set down plates of food that always tasted slightly off to me, too much seasoning, she'd said when I mentioned it. 12 weeks of her concerned face asking how I was feeling, suggesting maybe I should see a doctor because I looked peaked. Mrs. Chen, I need to ask you directly, is there anyone in your life who might want to harm you? Anyone with access to your food or drinks? Patricia's voice echoed in my memory from just 2 nights ago. Jake deserves someone strong, someone who can keep up with our family's traditions. Some women just aren't cut out for marriage, dear. She'd said it while sliding a bowl of her homemade soup across the kitchen island, the same soup that had left me bedridden for 6 hours afterward. I need to call the police, I whispered. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. I'm required to report this. Ethylene glycol poisoning is attempted murder, Mrs. Chen. Another few weeks at these levels, and we'd be looking at permanent kidney damage, seizures, or worse. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Mom made your favorite chicken casserole for dinner. She's worried you haven't been eating enough. The irony was suffocating. Patricia Chen, pillar of St. Mary's Catholic Church, volunteer at the food bank every Saturday, the woman who'd given a tearful speech at our wedding about gaining a daughter, she'd been slowly killing me. Literally killing me, one carefully poisoned meal at a time. Doctor, how long do I have before? I couldn't finish the question. With immediate cessation of exposure and treatment, you should make a full recovery. But Sarah, if you go back to that house, if you eat anything she prepares. He didn't need to finish. I thought about Jake, about how his face lit up whenever his mother praised something he did. How he dismissed my complaints about feeling sick as wedding stress and adjustment anxiety. How Patricia had nodded along sympathetically every time, suggesting maybe I needed vitamins or more sleep. The lab results showed exact numbers, 47.2 milligrams per liter in my blood, nearly triple the level considered acutely toxic. She hadn't just been trying to make me sick. She'd been calculating my death, one dinner at a time. The drive home felt like driving to my own execution. Every red light gave me more time to think about what came next. I had Dr. Martinez's direct number programmed into my phone. Detective Rodriguez was expecting my call within the hour, and I had a small bag of activated charcoal tablets in my purse, just in case I accidentally ingested anything before I could get out of that house. But first, I needed proof that would hold up in court. The blood test showed what had happened to me, but I needed evidence of how. I parked 3 blocks away and walked back, letting myself in through the side door that led directly to the kitchen. Patricia's voice drifted from the living room where she was watching her afternoon soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful, at exactly 3:30 p.m., same as every weekday for the past 12 weeks. My hands shook as I opened the refrigerator, scanning every container with new eyes. The homemade salad dressing she insisted I use because store-bought was full of chemicals. The special fruit smoothie ingredients she'd bought just for me after I mentioned trying to eat healthier. The leftover soup from 2 nights ago, still sitting in a covered bowl with my name written on masking tape. I pulled out my phone and started recording, narrating quietly as I examined each item. Tuesday, March 15th, 3:45 p.m. Searching Patricia Chen's refrigerator for potential sources of ethylene glycol poisoning. The garage was connected to the kitchen through a small utility room. Patricia's late husband's workbench was still set up exactly as he'd left it 2 years ago, she'd told us proudly. Tools organized in neat rows, containers of various automotive fluids lined up on shelves. 3 different bottles of antifreeze. One was nearly empty, a Red Peak brand container that should have been full. According to the receipt I found crumpled in the workbench drawer, she'd bought it 6 weeks ago. The math made my stomach lurch. 6 weeks ago was exactly when my symptoms had gotten worse, when I'd started having those episodes where I'd feel drunk and disoriented for hours after eating. I photographed everything, including the receipt dated February 3rd for $12.47 at AutoZone. Patricia had bought antifreeze in the middle of winter in Phoenix, Arizona, where it hadn't dropped below 50 degrees in months. Sarah? Sweetheart, is that you? Patricia's voice called from the kitchen. I quickly closed the garage door and walked back inside, slipping my phone into my back pocket but leaving the recording running. Hi, Patricia. Just getting some water. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet, my movements feeling mechanical and strange. Oh good, you're home early. I've been simmering that chicken casserole all day, the one with the special mushroom sauce you liked so much last time. She smiled warmly, the same grandmother-like expression she'd given me every day for 3 months. Jake called and said he'll be working late again, so it'll just be us girls for dinner. The casserole dish sat on the stove, bubbling quietly. It smelled delicious, rich and creamy. Exactly like the one that had left me violently ill for 8 hours last month. The one Jake had eaten without any problems because Patricia had served us from different sides of the pan. That's so thoughtful of you, I managed, setting down the empty glass. I'm actually not feeling great though. Might just skip dinner tonight. Patricia's smile faltered just slightly. Nonsense, you need to eat. You're getting too thin, Jake mentioned he's worried about you. She moved toward the stove, reaching for the serving spoon. Just a small portion. For strength. The kitchen suddenly felt impossibly small, like the walls were closing in. Patricia stood between me and the main exit, holding a ladle full of what I now knew was my attempted murder, disguised as concern for my health. My phone was still recording in my pocket, capturing every word. You know what, you're right, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. I should eat something. Let me just wash my hands first. I turned toward the sink, angling my body so the phone in my back pocket would catch our conversation clearly. In the reflection of the kitchen window, I could see Patricia ladling the casserole into a bowl, her movements careful and deliberate. She reached into the spice cabinet, the one she always told me not to touch because she had everything organized just so, and pulled out a small unmarked container. My blood turned to ice as I watched her shake something from it into my portion. Just a few granules, barely visible, stirred in with practiced ease. She'd done this so many times she didn't even hesitate. There we go, Patricia said cheerfully as I dried my hands on the dish towel. Extra seasoning, just how you like it. The bowl she set in front of me looked identical to what she'd prepared for herself, but I'd seen the truth in that window reflection. 2 portions, 2 different preparations. Jake's mother and her special seasoning that was slowly destroying my kidneys. It smells amazing, I said, picking up the spoon with trembling fingers. What's your secret ingredient? Jake's always saying he can never replicate your recipes. Patricia beamed with pride, settling into her chair across from me. Oh, it's just a little something extra I add to give it more depth. A family recipe, you could say. She took a large bite of her own portion. My mother-in-law taught it to me when I was first married. Sometimes the new wives need a little adjustment period. The word sent chills down my spine. Had she done this before? To Jake's father's first wife, who'd died young in what everyone called a tragic accident. That's so sweet that you want to share family traditions with me, I said, moving the food around my bowl without taking a bite. I'd love to learn more about the Chin family history. Jake doesn't talk much about his father's first marriage. Patricia's fork paused midway to her mouth. Ancient history, dear. Some stories are better left buried. She gestured toward my untouched bowl. Eat up before it gets cold. I made it specially for you. The pressure in her voice was unmistakable now. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. Of course. I lifted the spoon, loaded with casserole, and brought it close to my lips. Patricia watched intently, her own eating forgotten. At the last second, I pretended to lose my grip, letting the spoon clatter into the bowl and splash sauce onto the table. Oh no, I'm so clumsy today. Here, let me get you a clean spoon. Patricia jumped up immediately, moving toward the drawer. While her back was turned, I quickly scraped most of the casserole into the napkin on my lap, leaving just enough in the bowl to look like I'd been eating. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. Thank you. I accepted the new spoon and took the tiniest possible bite from what remained, barely letting it touch my tongue before swallowing. Even that small amount made my stomach clench with anxiety. Better? Patricia asked, sitting back down. Her eyes never left my face, studying my every reaction. Much better. I managed another microscopic bite. Patricia, can I ask you something personal? Of course, sweetheart. Do you really think Jake and I are going to make it? I know this living situation isn't ideal, and I worry sometimes that I'm not what your family expected. Her smile turned predatory. Oh, Sarah, you're exactly what I expected. Exactly what I planned for. The words hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just trying to get rid of me, this had been calculated from the beginning. What do you mean, planned for? I asked, forcing myself to take another tiny bite while my stomach churned with more than just the poison. Patricia leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting into something I'd never seen before. The mask of the doting mother-in-law was slipping, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Jake has always been too trusting. Too willing to see the good in people. She dabbed at her mouth with her napkin, taking her time. When he brought you home for Christmas 2 years ago, I knew immediately you were wrong for him. Too independent. Too modern. The Chin family needs wives who understand their place. My phone continued recording in my pocket as Patricia's confession unfolded. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was screaming. 2 years. She'd been planning this for 2 years. I tried to talk him out of proposing, she continued, but he wouldn't listen. Said you made him happy. The way she said happy made it sound like a disease. So I knew I'd have to handle things myself. Protect my son from making the biggest mistake of his life. And Linda? I asked quietly, thinking of the first wife she'd mentioned. Jake's father's first wife? Patricia's smile grew wider, more genuine than any expression I'd seen from her in 3 months. Car accident. Such a tragedy. She'd been feeling so poorly those last few weeks, dizzy spells and such. Lost control on that curve near Camelback Mountain. She shook her head sadly. Poor Harold was devastated, but I was there to help him through his grief. We married 8 months later. The casserole in my mouth turned to ash. This woman had murdered before. Had perfected her method over decades, and I was just the latest in a line of inconvenient women who'd gotten in her way. That's terrible, I managed. She was so young. 26, Patricia said matter-of-factly. Same as you were when you married Jake. Funny how these things work out. I needed to get out of this kitchen, away from this woman, but I also needed more evidence. The recording would help, but I needed her to be more explicit about what she'd done to me. Patricia, I need to tell you something. I set down my spoon and leaned forward conspiratorially. I've been having the strangest symptoms lately. Fatigue, stomach problems. Jake thinks it's stress, but I went to the doctor today. Her eyes sharpened with interest. Oh? What did they find? Nothing conclusive yet. More tests next week. I watched her face carefully. But Dr. Martinez seemed concerned. Asked if I'd been exposed to any chemicals or toxins. Patricia's fork clinked against her bowl as her hand tightened around it. How strange. What kind of toxins? He mentioned something about antifreeze poisoning, but that's ridiculous, right? I mean, how would anyone accidentally ingest antifreeze? I laughed, making it sound absurd. I told him he was crazy. Who would even have access to that kind of thing? Very strange indeed, Patricia agreed, but her voice had gone flat. These young doctors, they watch too much television. Always looking for drama where there isn't any. Exactly. That's what I said. I pushed my bowl away slightly. I'm actually feeling a bit tired now. I think I'll go lie down for a bit before Jake gets home. Nonsense, you haven't finished your dinner. Patricia's tone had shifted back to that commanding edge. I spent all afternoon preparing this. The least you can do is clean your plate. I really am feeling nauseous. Sit down. The words came out sharp and cold. Patricia's grandmother-like facade had completely vanished, replaced by something fierce and dangerous. You're not leaving this table until you finish what I prepared for you. I remained standing, my chair pushed back slightly. Patricia, I don't think. I know exactly what you think. She stood up abruptly, her own chair scraping against the floor. You think you're smarter than me. Think you can come into my family, into my home, and disrupt everything I built. The kitchen felt like a trap now, Patricia blocking the main exit to the living room while I stood cornered between the table and the counter. The casserole bowl sat between us like evidence of her intent, the poisoned food growing cold. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family, she continued, her voice rising. What I've done to protect what matters. And I won't let some spoiled little girl destroy Jake's future. My hand moved instinctively toward my phone, making sure it was still recording. Every word of this confession was being captured, building the case that would finally stop her. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. I love Jake. I want what's best for him too. Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Love? You call this love? You've made him weak, dependent. The Jake I raised would never have chosen someone like you. The implications of her words hit me like a sledgehammer. She hadn't just been poisoning me, she'd been manipulating Jake our entire relationship, working to undermine his confidence in his own choices. How long have you been planning this, Patricia? Her smile returned, cold and victorious. Since the day you said yes to his proposal, dear. Every meal, every kind gesture, every moment of concern for your health, it's all been leading to this. You're insane, I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Patricia's face twisted into something ugly. Insane? I'm the only sane person in this family. I'm the one willing to do what's necessary. She moved closer, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. That first night you ate my cooking, remember? The welcome dinner when you and Jake moved in? You complimented my green bean casserole, said it had such a unique flavor. My stomach lurched as I remembered that meal. I'd been sick for 2 days afterward, but attributed it to stress from the move. Jake had been fine because he'd eaten the leftover pizza instead, claiming he was too full from lunch. You started with just a tiny amount, I said, the pieces clicking together in my head. Testing to see how much I could handle before Jake would notice. Very good. Patricia's eyes gleamed with pride, like a teacher praising a slow student. Small doses, spread out over time. Enough to make you weak and sick, but not enough to kill you quickly. I needed Jake to see you failing, to watch you become a burden. The calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. She'd been destroying my health slowly, methodically, while positioning herself as the concerned mother-in-law just trying to help. But you miscalculated, I said, backing toward the utility room door. I went to the doctor before you were ready. Patricia's expression darkened. Dr. Martinez always was too thorough. I told Jake he should take you to the urgent care clinic instead. Those doctors are so busy, they never run comprehensive blood panels. The admission sent ice through my veins. She'd been trying to control even my medical care, steering me away from anyone who might discover what she was doing. Jake doesn't know, I said. It wasn't a question. Of course not. My son is a good man, but he's trusting to a fault. He sees the best in everyone. Patricia's voice filled with maternal pride that made my skin crawl. When you're gone, I'll help him understand that it was for the best. That some marriages are just cursed. Like Linda's marriage to your husband? The question hit its mark. Patricia's face went white, then flushed red with anger. Linda was a mistake. Harold's first wife was supposed to be temporary. I was working as his secretary then, waiting for the right moment. But Linda dragged it out, made him think he was happy. So you killed her. I liberated him. Patricia's voice carried the fervor of someone who'd convinced themselves they were righteous. Just like I'm liberating Jake. You'll see, in a few weeks, when you're too sick to hide it anymore, when Jake sees how weak and needy you become, he'll realize I was right all along. The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway made us both freeze. Jake's voice carried through the front door as he talked on his phone, probably finishing up a work call before coming inside. Perfect timing, Patricia whispered, her demeanor shifting instantly back to concerned mother-in-law mode. Sit down and finish your dinner, Sarah. Jake will be so pleased to see you eating well. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. Patricia's mask slipped again. If you don't eat that casserole right now, I'll tell Jake you attacked me. That you've been acting erratically, violently. Who do you think he'll believe, his sick, unstable wife, or his mother who's been taking care of both of you? The front door opened, and Jake's footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mom? Sarah? I'm home. Patricia picked up my bowl of poisoned casserole and held it out to me, her smile returning. Last chance, dear. Eat up, or I start screaming. My phone was still recording everything, but Jake was seconds away from walking into the kitchen. If Patricia carried out her threat, if she convinced Jake I was having some kind of breakdown, I might not get another chance to expose her. The bowl trembled in Patricia's hands as footsteps approached the kitchen door. Jake's footsteps were getting closer, his voice carrying down the hallway as he talked to someone on speakerphone about quarterly reports. Patricia stood frozen with a bowl of poisoned casserole in her hands, her eyes locked on mine with a mixture of desperation and fury. The kitchen felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. I need to use the bathroom, I said loudly enough for Jake to hear, then grabbed the bowl from Patricia's hands and walked quickly toward the utility room. I'll finish eating in just a minute. Patricia's mouth opened in shock as I disappeared around the corner with her carefully prepared murder weapon. In the small utility room, I dumped the entire contents into a mason jar I found on the shelf, screwing the lid tight. Evidence. Then I quickly rinsed the bowl in the utility sink and filled it with water, making it look like I'd eaten everything and was just cleaning up. Sarah? Jake's voice was right outside the door now. You okay in there? Perfect timing, honey. I called back, slipping the mason jar behind a paint can on the shelf. Just finished that amazing casserole your mom made. When I walked back into the kitchen, Patricia's face was chalk white. Jake stood near the stove, loosening his tie, looking tired but happy to be home. Mom says you've been feeling better today, he said, pulling me into a hug. I'm so glad. I was starting to worry we should get a second opinion about these stomach issues. Actually, I said, meeting Patricia's panicked eyes over Jake's shoulder, Dr. Martinez called this afternoon with some test results. He wants to see both of us tomorrow morning at 9. Patricia's hands gripped the back of her chair so tightly her knuckles went white. Both of you? Why would he need to see Jake? Family medical history, I lied smoothly, keeping my phone recording in my pocket. He's being very thorough. Asked specifically about any history of kidney problems or autoimmune disorders in Jake's family. Jake pulled back to look at me, concerned. Kidney problems? Sarah, what exactly did those tests show? Before I could answer, Patricia spoke up, her voice artificially bright. I'm sure it's nothing serious, Jake. You know how doctors are these days, they run every test imaginable just to cover themselves legally. Mom's probably right, Jake said, but I could see the worry creeping into his expression. Though it is weird that you've been sick for so long. Maybe we should have insisted on more comprehensive testing earlier. The timing actually worked out perfectly, I said, watching Patricia's face grow paler. Dr. Martinez said if we'd waited much longer, if I'd been exposed to whatever's making me sick for even another week or two, the damage could have been permanent. Patricia made a small choking sound, disguising it as a cough. Exposed to what? Jake asked sharply. Sarah, what aren't you telling me? I felt the weight of the moment, the decision point where everything would change forever. Patricia stood 3 feet away, the woman who'd been slowly murdering me while playing the role of caring mother-in-law. In my pocket, my phone continued recording what might be the evidence that would save my life and put her in prison. Dr. Martinez thinks someone has been poisoning me, I said quietly. 4 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, then dawning horror. Patricia remained frozen by her chair, trapped between her son and her victim. Poisoning? Jake's voice came out as barely a whisper. Sarah, that's impossible. Who would? How would? His eyes moved between Patricia and me, and I watched the exact moment when the first seeds of suspicion took root in his mind. We'll know more tomorrow, I said gently. Dr. Martinez has been running tests to identify the specific toxin and the source. Patricia finally found her voice. This is ridiculous, Jake. Sarah's been under tremendous stress, and now she's having paranoid delusions. We should get her psychiatric help, not encourage these fantasies. But Jake wasn't looking at his mother anymore. He was staring at me with growing alarm and something that might have been belief. Jake, I said carefully, there's something else. The blood test showed ethylene glycol poisoning. Antifreeze. The levels indicate I've been ingesting small amounts regularly for about 3 months. Jake's face went ashen. 3 months? But that's exactly when we moved in with. He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes darting to his mother. Don't you dare, Patricia hissed, her composure finally cracking completely. Don't you dare stand there and accuse me of hurting that girl. After everything I've done for this family, after all the sacrifices. Mom. Jake's voice was deadly quiet. Where's the antifreeze Dad used to keep in the garage? How would I know? I don't go through Harold's old things. But her voice wavered, and I could see Jake picking up on every towel, the way she wouldn't meet his eyes, how her hands shook as she gripped the chair. I pulled out my phone, my heart hammering as I made the decision that would change everything. Jake, I need you to listen to something. Patricia lunged forward. No. Jake, don't let her manipulate you with whatever lies she's. But I'd already hit play on the recording. Patricia's voice filled the kitchen, clear and damning. I started with just a tiny amount. Testing to see how much I could handle before Jake would notice. Jake's face went through a transformation I'll never forget. Confusion melted into horror, then into a rage so pure it scared me. What the hell is this? Mom, what is she talking about? The recording continued, small doses, spread out over time. Enough to make you weak and sick, but not enough to kill you quickly. I needed Jake to see you failing. Turn it off, Patricia whispered, but her voice carried no authority anymore. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Jake grabbed the phone from my hands, staring at it like it might bite him. This is your voice, Mom. This is you talking about poisoning my wife. You don't understand the context. What context? Jake's voice exploded through the kitchen. What possible context makes it okay to put antifreeze in someone's food? Patricia straightened, and for a moment I saw a flash of the calculated killer she really was. She was destroying you, Jake. Making you weak, pulling you away from family values. I was protecting you. Protecting me? Jake's voice cracked. Mom, you were murdering my wife. I was saving your future. Patricia shot back. Just like I saved your father from that first marriage. Linda was all wrong for him too, but he couldn't see it until. She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. Jake went completely still. What did you just say about Linda? The color drained from Patricia's face as she realized her mistake. Nothing. I meant nothing by that. But I could see Jake's mind working, connecting dots he'd probably never allowed himself to consider before. Linda died in a car accident. She'd been sick for weeks before she crashed. Dizzy spells. Loss of coordination. His voice got quieter with each word. The same symptoms Sarah's been having. Patricia backed toward the kitchen island, trapped now between her confessions and her son's dawning realization of who she really was. Jake, you have to understand, she pleaded, everything I did was out of love. Love for you, for this family's future. You killed Linda, Jake said, the words falling like stones into water. And you've been trying to kill Sarah. The admission hung in the air between them, a 30-year-old murder and an attempted murder happening right under his nose. In that moment, I watched Jake's entire understanding of his mother, his family, his whole life, crumble into dust. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Jake stood frozen, staring at his mother with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of revulsion and heartbreak that made my chest ache for him. Patricia had backed herself against the kitchen island, her carefully maintained facade completely shattered. Jake, sweetheart, you have to listen to me, Patricia said, her voice taking on a desperate, pleading tone I'd never heard from her before. That girl has poisoned your mind against me. Can't you see what she's doing? She's turning you against her own mother. But Jake was shaking his head slowly, like he was trying to clear water from his ears. The night Linda died, he said quietly, I was 17. I remember you making her tea because she felt so sick. You insisted on it, said it would help with the nausea. I was being kind to her. You brought it to her in Dad's favorite mug. The blue ceramic one he'd had since college. Jake's voice grew stronger, more certain. She drank the whole thing because she didn't want to hurt your feelings. Told me it tasted bitter, but you'd been so thoughtful. Patricia's composure cracked further. You're remembering wrong. It was so long ago, and you were just a teenager. She was dead 6 hours later, Jake continued, his voice hollow. Lost control of her car on a straight stretch of road she'd driven hundreds of times. The police said it was probably a medical episode, but they never investigated because why would they? Car accidents happen. I watched Patricia's face cycle through expressions as she realized Jake was putting together pieces she thought were safely buried. Her mask of maternal concern was completely gone now, replaced by the cold calculation I'd glimpsed earlier. That's enough, she said sharply, her tone shifting back to the commanding voice she'd used when trying to force me to eat the casserole. I won't stand here and listen to these accusations based on Sarah's delusions and your misremembered childhood trauma. Jake pulled his phone out of his pocket. I'm calling Detective Rodriguez. Sarah gave me his number earlier. No. Patricia's voice cracked like a whip. Jake, if you make that call, you'll destroy this family. Everything your father built, everything I protected, it'll all be gone. Good, Jake said simply, his finger hovering over the screen. Maybe it should be gone. Patricia's desperation reached a new level. Your father knew, she whispered, the words falling like bombs in the quiet kitchen. About Linda. He figured it out about a year after we married. Found the empty antifreeze container I'd forgotten to throw away. Jake's hand froze. What? He confronted me, threatened to go to the police. But then I reminded him that he'd benefit from Linda's life insurance, from her half of their savings account. I made him see that Linda's death had given him a better life, a better wife. Patricia's voice grew stronger, more confident. He chose to protect me, Jake. He chose family over some misguided sense of justice. The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. I watched him stagger slightly, gripping the counter for support. His father, the man he'd idealized, whose memory he'd cherished, had been complicit in covering up murder. Dad knew you killed her, and he stayed married to you? Jake's voice was barely audible. He understood what I understood, Patricia said, sensing she might be gaining ground. Sometimes love requires difficult choices. Sometimes protecting family means making sacrifices that other people wouldn't understand. I realized with growing horror that she was trying to manipulate Jake the same way she'd manipulated his father 30 years ago. Trying to make him complicit in attempted murder by framing it as family loyalty. Jake, I said softly, don't let her do this to you. Don't let her make you choose between justice and family. You're not your father. Patricia's eyes flashed with anger. Shut up. This is between me and my son. You've done enough damage to this family. The damage was already done, Jake said, his voice growing steadier. 30 years ago, when you murdered Linda. 3 months ago, when you started poisoning Sarah. The only question now is whether I'm going to be like Dad and help you cover it up, or whether I'm going to do the right thing. Patricia's face cycled through emotions, fear, anger, calculation. I could practically see her mind working, trying to find the right combination of words that would keep her son under her control. If you call the police, she said quietly, I'll tell them Sarah knew about Linda. That she's been blackmailing me for months, threatening to expose family secrets unless I helped her fake a poisoning to get insurance money. The lie was so audacious, so perfectly crafted, that for a moment I was speechless. She'd create reasonable doubt, make me look like a co-conspirator instead of a victim. Jake looked at me, and I saw doubt creeping into his eyes. Not doubt about his mother's guilt, but doubt about whether we could prove it. Whether Patricia's 30 years of experience covering up murder might be enough to destroy us both. She's lying, I said, but even to my own ears it sounded weak against Patricia's confident manipulation. Patricia smiled, sensing the shift in power. Of course I'm lying, dear. But can you prove that? The weight of Patricia's threat settled over the kitchen like a toxic cloud. She was right, after 30 years of successfully covering up one murder, she knew exactly how to create reasonable doubt. My recording was damning, but a good lawyer could argue it was taken out of context, that I'd manipulated a confused elderly woman into saying incriminating things. Jake, Patricia continued, her voice gaining strength, think about this logically. Sarah claims I've been poisoning her for 3 months, but she never said anything until today? Never complained about the taste of her food, never refused to eat what I prepared? What kind of victim willingly consumes poison for 12 weeks? I watched Jake's face, saw him wrestling with the horrible logic of her argument. She was twisting the truth with surgical precision, the way only someone with decades of practice could. She complained all the time, Jake said slowly. About feeling sick after meals, about the food tasting off. I told her she was being paranoid. Exactly. Patricia pounced on his words. She was setting up this elaborate scheme from the beginning. Making you witness her complaints so you could testify to them later. Classic insurance fraud behavior. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. Mrs. Chen, Detective Rodriguez needs to speak with you tonight. Can you come to the station at 8 p.m.? Patricia's eyes caught the notification on my screen. How convenient. Already coordinating with the police before you've even told your husband the full truth. She turned to Jake with renewed confidence. Son, I've seen this exact scam on the news. Young wives who fake medical emergencies, plant evidence, even poison themselves in small doses to create believable symptoms. That's insane, I said, but my voice cracked. The recording that had felt like salvation 5 minutes ago now seemed fragile, vulnerable to Patricia's expert manipulation. Is it? Patricia asked, addressing Jake directly. Sarah has access to the garage, the same as anyone. She could have easily taken antifreeze and ingested controlled amounts to create the blood test results. Then she records our private conversation, tricks me into saying things that sound incriminating when taken out of context. Jake looked between us, his face pale with confusion and growing doubt. Mom, the recording, you admitted to poisoning her. You talked about Linda's death. I was humoring her delusions. Patricia's voice carried just the right note of maternal exasperation. Sarah's been making these wild accusations for weeks, getting more and more agitated. I thought if I played along, agreed with her fantasies, maybe I could talk her into getting psychiatric help. The lie was so smooth, so perfectly crafted, that I felt my certainty wavering. Patricia had 30 years to perfect her story about Linda, 30 years to practice being the grieving stepmother instead of the calculating murderer. Show him the mason jar, I said desperately. In the utility room, behind the paint can. That's tonight's casserole, the one you watched her add the unmarked seasoning to. Patricia's confident smile flickered for just a moment. What mason jar? Jake, she's becoming increasingly paranoid, seeing evidence that doesn't exist. But Jake was already moving toward the utility room. I heard him shifting things around on the shelf, then a sharp intake of breath. Mom, he called out, his voice strange. There's a jar back here with food in it. And there's an unmarked container of white powder on Dad's workbench. Patricia's face went ashen, but she recovered quickly. Sarah must have planted those things. Jake, think about it, if I were really poisoning her, why would I leave evidence sitting around for anyone to find? Because you've been getting away with murder for 30 years, I said, my voice stronger now. You got overconfident. Sloppy. The kitchen fell silent except for Jake's footsteps returning from the utility room. He carried the mason jar in one hand and a small plastic container in the other, the unmarked seasoning Patricia had used. We're taking these to the police, he said quietly. Tonight. Along with Sarah's recording and the blood test results. Patricia's mask finally slipped completely. The concerned mother disappeared, replaced by something cold and vicious. If you do that, Jake, you'll lose everything. Your father's reputation, your inheritance, your standing in this community. I'll make sure everyone knows Sarah seduced you into betraying your own family. Then that's a price I'll pay, Jake said, his voice steady for the first time since this nightmare began. I won't be Dad. I won't choose silence over justice. Patricia stared at her son for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant she realized she'd lost him forever. Patricia's face transformed into something I'd never seen before, pure, calculating rage mixed with the desperation of a cornered animal. For 30 years, she'd controlled every narrative, manipulated every situation to her advantage. Now, watching that control slip away, she looked genuinely dangerous. You think you've won, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. But you have no idea what you're dealing with. She moved toward the kitchen drawer, the same one she'd gotten the clean spoon from earlier. My blood turned to ice as I realized what she might be reaching for. Jake, I said urgently, but he was already stepping between his mother and the drawer. Stop. His voice carried an authority I'd never heard from him before. Whatever you're thinking, just stop. Patricia's hand froze on the drawer handle. I raised you, Jake. Fed you, clothed you, protected you from every danger in this world. And this is how you repay me? By choosing her over your own mother? You tried to murder my wife, Jake said, his voice breaking slightly. You murdered Linda. You've been lying to me my entire adult life. I gave you a better life. Patricia snapped, abandoning any pretense of maternal gentleness. Linda would have filled your father's head with nonsense about moving away, starting fresh somewhere else. She would have taken you away from me, from everything that mattered. The admission hit Jake like a physical blow. You killed her because you thought she'd take us away? I killed her because she was weak, Patricia said, her voice gaining strength as she embraced the truth. Just like Sarah. Weak women who couldn't appreciate what they had, who wanted to change everything instead of being grateful for their place in this family. I was recording again, my phone capturing every word of her confession. But Patricia was beyond caring about evidence now. She was completely unmasked, 30 years of careful pretense stripped away. The night Linda died, she continued, turning to face Jake fully, she told me at dinner that she was pregnant. 4 months along, she said. Can you imagine? Another child to divide your father's attention, to complicate the inheritance, to water down everything I'd worked so hard to build. Jake went white. She was pregnant? Not for long. Patricia's smile was terrifying. I doubled the dose that night. Made sure it looked like a tragic accident, the poor expectant mother, overcome with dizzy spells, losing control of her vehicle. The sympathy your father received was overwhelming. Made our courtship so much easier. The casual way she discussed murdering a pregnant woman and her unborn child made my stomach turn. This wasn't just about jealousy or control, Patricia was a sociopath who'd been operating freely for decades. You're a monster, Jake whispered. I'm a survivor, Patricia corrected. And I'm practical. Which is why I'm offering you one last chance to be practical too. She reached into her purse, which I'd barely noticed sitting on the counter, and pulled out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. Concentrated ethylene glycol, she said conversationally, holding it up to the light. Much more efficient than the small doses I've been using. Sarah drinks this, and her suffering ends tonight. We tell the paramedics she'd been feeling suicidal, overwhelmed by her mystery illness. Jake, you get to grieve your unstable wife and move on with your life. I help you find someone more suitable. The kitchen went dead silent. Patricia stood there holding what amounted to a death sentence in a bottle, looking at us like she'd just suggested we order takeout for dinner. You're insane, I breathed. I'm giving you a choice, Patricia said, her eyes fixed on Jake. Your wife dies tonight and this ends quietly, or you go to the police and watch me destroy both your reputations in court. I've had 30 years to perfect Linda's story. By the time I'm done, everyone will believe Sarah killed herself rather than face prosecution for insurance fraud. Jake's face cycled through emotions, horror, disgust, and something that might have been grief for the mother he thought he knew. There's a third option, he said quietly. Patricia raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You drink it yourself. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and for the first time since this confrontation began, Patricia looked genuinely surprised. The vial trembled slightly in Patricia's hand as Jake's words sank in. For the first time since this nightmare began, she looked genuinely rattled by his suggestion. That's not funny, Jake, she said, but her voice had lost its commanding edge. I'm not joking. Jake stepped closer to his mother, and I could see the transformation happening in real time, the confused, manipulated son disappearing, replaced by someone harder. You just offered to murder my wife in front of me. You admitted to killing Linda and her unborn child. You poisoned Sarah for 3 months. So here's my counteroffer, drink your own medicine, or I call Detective Rodriguez right now. Patricia's laugh came out shaky and forced. You wouldn't. You're not a killer, Jake. You're nothing like me. You're right. I'm not like you. Which is why I'm giving you a choice you never gave Linda or Sarah. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Patricia's eyes darted between the vial in her hand, Jake's determined face, and the kitchen door leading to potential escape routes. I could practically see her mind calculating odds, weighing options. Jake, sweetheart, she tried one more time, her voice softening back into maternal mode. You don't really want to watch your mother die. Think about what that would do to you psychologically. The guilt would destroy you. The guilt of letting you live to hurt someone else would be worse, Jake replied. His phone was already in his other hand. I'm calling Detective Rodriguez in 60 seconds. Drink it, or face trial for 2 murders and 1 attempted murder. Patricia's composure cracked further. This is ridiculous. I'm not drinking antifreeze because my son is having some kind of emotional breakdown. 50 seconds, Jake said, his finger hovering over the phone screen. Jake, listen to me, Patricia's voice rose in panic. 40 seconds. The same amount of time you gave Linda to realize something was wrong with her tea. I watched Patricia's face cycle through expressions of rage, fear, and calculation. She was a woman who'd spent 30 years believing she was untouchable, that her intelligence and manipulation skills could get her out of any situation. Now, trapped between certain prosecution and her son's ultimatum, she looked genuinely confused about what to do next. You know what the worst part is? Jake continued, his voice steady despite the enormity of what he was asking. I actually loved you. Even after Linda died, even through all the years of your controlling behavior, I thought you were just an overprotective mother. I made excuses for you to every girlfriend I ever had. Patricia's grip on the vial tightened. I was protecting you. 30 seconds, Mom. You protected me right into marrying a woman you tried to kill. The sound of a car door slamming in the driveway made us all freeze. Through the kitchen window, I could see Detective Rodriguez's unmarked sedan parked behind Jake's car. He was early, probably because Dr. Martinez had filled him in on the urgency of the situation. Patricia's eyes widened as she spotted the detective walking up our front path. You called them already, she whispered, the betrayal in her voice almost comical given everything she'd done. Sarah texted him our address 20 minutes ago, Jake said. Turns out my wife is smarter than both of us gave her credit for. The doorbell rang, followed by a firm knock and Rodriguez's voice, Phoenix PD. We're looking for Sarah Chin. Patricia stared at the vial in her hand, then at the kitchen door where Detective Rodriguez would appear any moment, then back at Jake's implacable expression. I won't go to prison, she said quietly, and for the first time, she sounded like a frightened old woman instead of a calculating killer. Then you know what you have to do, Jake replied. The kitchen door began to rattle as Detective Rodriguez tried the handle from the outside. Patricia's hand shook as she stared at the vial, Detective Rodriguez's knocking growing more insistent at the front door. The kitchen felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Mrs. Chin? Rodriguez called out. We need to speak with you about your medical situation. I won't drink this, Patricia said suddenly, her voice regaining some strength. And I won't go to prison either. She moved toward the kitchen window, the one that faced our backyard and the desert preserve beyond. 30 years, Jake. 30 years I've been planning for contingencies. My blood ran cold as I realized what she meant. Patricia had been preparing for this day since Linda's death, probably had escape routes and resources we couldn't imagine. The bank account in Tucson, Jake said slowly, pieces clicking together. The one you said was for emergency funds. And that storage unit you rent across town. Patricia's smile returned, cold and triumphant. New identity documents, cash, everything I need to disappear. I'll be in Mexico before they even issue a warrant. The front door rattled as Rodriguez tried the handle. Phoenix PD. Open the door. Jake, I said urgently, she can't leave. If she gets away. I won't get away, Patricia interrupted. I'll just relocate. Start fresh somewhere else, maybe find a nice widower who needs a caring companion. Her eyes glittered with malice. And in a few years, when the heat dies down, maybe I'll send you a postcard from wherever I am. Jake moved to block the window, but Patricia was faster than either of us expected. She grabbed the largest knife from the cutting block on the counter, pointing it at us while backing toward the utility room. Move away from the window, son. Mom, put the knife down, Jake said, his hands raised peacefully. This doesn't have to get worse. It got worse the moment you chose her over me. Patricia's voice carried 30 years of resentment. The moment you decided to betray your own mother for some weak little girl who couldn't even defend herself properly. The sound of splintering wood came from the front of the house as Rodriguez apparently decided to force entry. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway, getting closer. Last chance, Patricia said, still holding the knife. She tucked the vial of concentrated antifreeze into her jacket pocket. Come with me, Jake. Leave her here for the police to sort out. We'll figure out the rest later. Phoenix PD. Rodriguez's voice boomed from the living room. Show me your hands. Jake looked at his mother, really looked at her, and I saw the final death of whatever love he'd carried for the woman who raised him. Go, he said quietly. Run to Mexico, start over, pretend to be someone else. But know that every day for the rest of your life, you'll be looking over your shoulder. Every knock at the door, every siren in the distance, every time someone asks too many questions about your past. Patricia's face crumpled slightly. Jake. And know that I'll make sure Linda's family finally learns the truth about what happened to her. Her sister deserves to know her death wasn't an accident. Detective Rodriguez appeared in the kitchen doorway, gun drawn, taking in the scene, Patricia with a knife, Jake and me backed against the counter, the mason jar of evidence sitting on the table. Drop the weapon. Rodriguez commanded. Patricia looked at the knife in her hand as if surprised to find it there. For a moment, I thought she might comply, might finally surrender to the inevitable consequences of 30 years of murder and manipulation. Instead, she smiled one last time at Jake, cold and maternal and utterly chilling. "Tell them I loved you," she said, then hurled the knife directly at Detective Rodriguez and bolted toward the utility room door. The knife clattered harmlessly against the doorframe as Detective Rodriguez dove sideways, but Patricia was already through the utility room, the back door slamming behind her. Rodriguez immediately spoke into his radio, suspect fleeing on foot, heading toward the desert preserve. Female, approximately 65, gray hair, wearing a blue cardigan. Consider armed and extremely dangerous. "Jake, are you both hurt?" Rodriguez asked, holstering his weapon as backup sirens wailed in the distance. "We're okay," I managed, though my hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Detective, she has a vial of concentrated ethylene glycol in her jacket pocket. She was going to force me to drink it." Rodriguez's expression darkened. "How much of a head start does she have on those trails?" Jake ran his hands through his hair, his face pale. "She knows every inch of that preserve. She's been hiking those trails for 20 years, ever since Dad's arthritis got too bad to join her. There are dozens of paths, some that connect to parking areas miles from here. Through the kitchen window, I could see flashlight beams sweeping across our backyard as officers set up a perimeter. But the preserve stretched for thousands of acres, full of caves and ravines and hidden spots where someone could disappear for days." "She mentioned Mexico," I told Rodriguez. "Said she had everything prepared, new identity, money, a storage unit across town." Rodriguez was already on his radio again, coordinating roadblocks and alerting border patrol. But I could see the concern in his eyes. Patricia had a 30-year head start on planning her escape route. "There's something else," Jake said quietly. He pulled the mason jar toward him, along with the unmarked container from the workbench. "This is tonight's dinner, the casserole she tried to make Sarah eat. And this powder is what she was adding to the food." Rodriguez carefully bagged both items. "We'll fast-track a lab analysis, but I'm guessing it'll confirm what we already know." He turned to me. "Mrs. Chen, I need you to know, even if she gets away tonight, we have enough evidence to prosecute. Your recording, the blood tests, these food samples, your husband's testimony about the conversation he witnessed." A helicopter searchlight swept across the backyard, its rotors beating like mechanical thunder. Officers were spreading out into the desert, but Patricia had at least a 10-minute head start into terrain she knew intimately. "Detective," I said, a horrible thought occurring to me, "she still has that vial of poison with her. If she thinks she's about to be caught." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "We briefed all units. No one approaches her without hazmat protocols." Jake slumped against the counter, looking older than I'd ever seen him. 30 years, he whispered. "She's been planning escape routes for 30 years, ever since she killed Linda. Storage units, bank accounts, probably safe houses we don't even know about." The radio crackled with updates, K9 units en route. Helicopter has thermal imaging but no contact yet. Roadblocks established on Desert Mountain Parkway and Cave Creek Road. Rodriguez's phone buzzed. After a brief conversation, he turned back to us with a mixed expression of hope and concern. "Good news is we found her car still in the garage, so she's on foot. Bad news is we just discovered she's been renting that storage unit under 3 different names over the past 5 years. The manager says she had access to a motorcycle that's now missing." My heart sank. Patricia wasn't just running blindly into the desert, she had vehicles, supplies, and backup plans we were only beginning to uncover. "How long before she reaches the Mexican border?" Jake asked. Rodriguez checked his watch, 11:47 p.m. "If she has transportation waiting and knows the back roads? She could be across by dawn." The helicopter's searchlight swept across the preserve one more time before banking east, following what the pilot thought might be Patricia's trail. Rodriguez was coordinating with Border Patrol when his radio crackled with an update that made my blood freeze. "Detective Rodriguez, this is Officer Martinez at the storage facility on 32nd Street. We've got the unit open. Suspect had enough cash here for 6 months, 3 sets of identity documents, and what looks like a detailed timeline of the victim's poisoning schedule." Rodriguez pressed the radio button. "What kind of timeline?" "Handwritten log going back 14 weeks. Dates, times, dosage amounts. She was tracking everything, the victim's weight loss, symptom progression, even optimal timing between doses to avoid detection." Jake made a choking sound beside me. 14 weeks. Patricia had been documenting my slow murder like a science experiment, noting which methods worked best, adjusting her approach based on my reactions. "There's more," Officer Martinez continued. "We found medical journals on toxicology, printouts about ethylene glycol metabolism, even research on how to mask the taste in different types of food. This wasn't impulsive, she'd been studying how to perfect the method." Rodriguez looked at me with something that might have been awe. "Mrs. Chen, you survived a very calculated attempt on your life. Most people wouldn't have made it past week 10 at the doses she was administering." The kitchen phone rang, startling all of us. Rodriguez nodded for Jake to answer it. "Hello?" Jake's voice was cautious. "Jake, sweetheart, it's me." Patricia's voice came through clear enough that Rodriguez and I could hear every word. "I'm calling from a payphone at the Circle K on Cave Creek Road. I wanted to say goodbye properly." Rodriguez immediately signaled his team, speaking quietly into his radio while gesturing for Jake to keep her talking. "Mom, where are you going?" Jake asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Somewhere I can start over. Maybe find another family that appreciates what I have to offer." Patricia's voice carried that familiar maternal warmth that now made my skin crawl. "I left something for you in my bedroom dresser, bottom drawer, behind the photo albums. Instructions for accessing the account in Tucson, along with your father's real will." Jake's face went white. "What do you mean, his real will?" "The one he wrote before he died, leaving everything to Linda's sister in Flagstaff. I convinced him to change it after I reminded him about our little secret regarding Linda's accident." Patricia's laugh was light, conversational. "Amazing how guilty conscience can motivate estate planning." Rodriguez was scribbling notes furiously while coordinating the trace on the payphone location. Through his radio, I could hear units being dispatched to the Circle K. "Mom, you don't have to run," Jake said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We can figure this out." "Oh, sweetheart, we both know that's not true. But don't worry about me. I've been planning this contingency for decades." Patricia paused, and when she spoke again, her tone shifted to something colder. though I am disappointed I won't get to see Sarah's final symptoms. The concentrated dose I prepared would have been so much more efficient than these drawn-out weekly treatments. My hands clenched involuntarily. Even now, fleeing from police, she was discussing my murder like a missed appointment. Jake, there's one more thing, Patricia continued. Check the basement storage room behind your father's old filing cabinet. You'll find Linda's jewelry, her wedding ring, that sapphire necklace Harold gave her for their anniversary. I kept them as souvenirs. The line went dead. Rodriguez was already moving toward the door. Units are 2 minutes out from that Circle K, but she's probably already gone. Smart Money says she's got another vehicle stashed nearby. Through the kitchen window, I watched more police cars race past, their red and blue lights painting the desert landscape in urgent colors. Patricia had a 30-year head start on planning this escape, and every revelation made it clearer just how methodical and prepared she really was. The call came at 6:23 a.m., just as Jake and I were giving our final statements to Detective Rodriguez. Patricia had been caught at a border checkpoint outside Nogales, Arizona, still carrying the vial of concentrated ethylene glycol in her jacket pocket. She had a fake passport, $47,000 in cash, and a detailed map of smuggling routes into Mexico, Rodriguez told us over coffee in the police station break room. But the Border Patrol agent recognized her from the bolo alert we sent out. Apparently she tried to flirt her way through the checkpoint, old habits die hard. Jake stared into his coffee cup, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Is she talking? Oh, she's talking plenty, Rodriguez said grimly. Apparently she wants to make sure everyone understands how clever she's been for 30 years. We've got confessions to Linda's murder, detailed explanations of her poisoning methods, even locations of evidence she's kept as trophies. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. Lab results confirm massive ethylene glycol contamination in food samples. You're lucky to be alive. The next 3 months were a blur of legal proceedings, medical treatments, and therapy sessions. The toxicology reports revealed that Patricia had been giving me doses that should have killed me weeks earlier. Apparently my body had developed some tolerance to the poison, which Dr. Martinez called a medical miracle that probably saved your life. Jake found Linda's jewelry exactly where Patricia said it would be, along with a handwritten journal documenting both murders in meticulous detail. The entries read like a scientist's lab notes, subject showing increased disorientation. Doubled evening dose, optimal absorption with dairy products. Target weight loss achieved ahead of schedule. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Patricia, representing herself after firing 3 different lawyers, used the courtroom as her personal stage. She explained her methods with pride, described her 30-year deception with satisfaction, and showed absolutely no remorse for attempting to murder me or for killing Linda and her unborn child. I was protecting my family, she told the jury during her closing argument, wearing the same blue cardigan she'd had on the night she fled. Everything I did was out of love for my son and grandchildren he deserved to have with the right woman. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts, 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and conspiracy charges related to her escape plan. Judge Sarah Brennan sentenced Patricia Chen to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 25 years for the attempted murder. Mrs. Chen, Judge Brennan said, looking directly at Patricia during sentencing, you spent 30 years believing you were smarter than everyone around you. You calculated murders, manipulated your own family, and showed a complete absence of human empathy. The only miscalculation you made was underestimating your daughter-in-law's strength and your son's moral compass. Patricia smiled throughout the sentencing, even waved at Jake and me from the defendant's table like she was leaving for vacation instead of prison. As we walked out of the courthouse that final day, Jake took my hand for the first time since this nightmare began. I keep thinking about what she said, he told me quietly. About protecting family. I thought I knew what that meant. You do know, I said, squeezing his fingers. You protected me. You chose justice over loyalty, truth over comfort. That's what protecting family actually looks like. The doctors say I'll make a full recovery. The blood tests show no permanent damage, and the symptoms have completely disappeared. Patricia's 30 years of expertise had finally failed her. She'd miscalculated the one variable she couldn't control. My will to live.